The marriage contract was signed in blood-red ink at 2:47 a.m. Ethan Cross, single father, exhausted analyst, man who'd sworn never to marry again, stood in a billionaire's penthouse holding a diamond ring he couldn't afford, facing a woman he barely knew. Isabella Reed, the most feared CEO in the pharmaceutical industry, had 46 hours before her own board could legally destroy her. The joke he'd made at her birthday party wasn't funny anymore. It was a lifeline, or a noose. Outside, thunder cracked over the lake. Inside, two strangers made a decision that would either save them both or bury them together. Before we begin, I need your help. This story travels further when you travel with it. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment with your city name. I want to see how far Ethan and Isabella's journey reaches across the world. Now, let's dive in. Ethan Cross had mastered the art of invisible exits. He could slip out of parent-teacher conferences before the bake sale volunteers cornered him. He could leave grocery stores without making eye contact with anyone from his daughter's school. He'd perfected the polite nod, the checking my phone shuffle, the sorry got to pick up Maya escape that worked in nearly every social situation. But tonight, standing in the backyard of a lakeside mansion that cost more than his entire neighborhood, surrounded by people whose watches cost more than his car, Ethan realized he'd miscalculated badly. He'd come to drop off the quarterly compliance report. That's it. Walk in, hand the folder to Jenkins, walk out. 15 minutes maximum. He'd promised Maya he'd be home by 9 to help her finish the diorama of the solar system that was due Monday, and he'd already texted Mrs. Chen next door twice to make sure everything was okay. But Jenkins had grabbed his arm the moment he walked in. "Cross, you're just in time. Ms. Reed's about to cut the cake. Stay for one drink. Office morale, you know how it is." Office morale. Right. Because Ethan Cross, senior compliance analyst, single father, man who brought Tupperware lunches and never attended happy hours, was exactly the kind of person who boosted morale at executive birthday parties. The backyard was a magazine spread come to life. String lights crisscrossed overhead like captured stars. Gold balloons clustered around a table that held a cake tall enough to require architectural planning. The pool reflected everything in shimmering doubles. 2 parties, 2 worlds, twice as much wealth as any normal person needed to see. Ethan stood near the back, holding a glass of champagne he hadn't sipped, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Maya had sent him a photo of Jupiter, slightly lopsided, but she'd used the technique he'd shown her with the papier-mâché. Pride swelled in his chest, the kind that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or pharmaceutical regulations. "Attention, everyone!" The voice cut through the garden party chatter like a scalpel. Clean, precise, impossible to ignore. Isabella Reed stood by the cake, and the backyard fell silent. Ethan had seen her exactly 4 times in the 3 years he'd worked for Reed Pharmaceutical. Twice in elevators. Both times she'd been on her phone, speaking in rapid-fire sentences about FDA approvals and market positioning. Once in the parking garage, getting into a car that cost more than most houses. And once during an all-hands meeting where she'd announced a restructuring that had eliminated 2 departments and somehow made the company stronger. She didn't do birthday parties. She didn't do casual. She definitely didn't do backyard gatherings with string lights and gold balloons. Yet here she was. The red dress was perfect, not showy, not revealing, just impossibly well cut in a way that suggested power rather than celebrated it. Her dark hair was pulled back severely. No jewelry except small diamond earrings that caught the light when she moved. She looked like someone who'd never been uncertain about anything in her entire life. "Thank you all for coming," Isabella said, her voice carrying effortlessly without being loud. "I don't usually celebrate birthdays, but Jenkins convinced me that 35 deserved acknowledgement, and I'm told there's an open bar, so really, you're all here for the free drinks, not for me." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. Ethan started edging toward the side gate. This was his moment. Everyone was distracted. He could slip out, text Jenkins an excuse about his daughter, be home in 20 minutes. "However," Isabella continued, "since we're all gathered, I should probably make this official. This year has been challenging. The Hartman merger, the FDA delays, the supply chain disasters that nearly cost us Q3, but we survived, and we'll do better next year." She paused, her eyes scanning the crowd with the kind of assessment that made grown executives nervous. "So here's to survival," Isabella said, raising her glass, "and to the people who actually do the work that makes survival possible." More laughter, more raised glasses. Ethan took another step toward the gate. Her eyes landed on him. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, maybe less. But in that brief moment, Ethan felt the full weight of Isabella Reed's attention, and it was like being caught in a searchlight. Bright, exposing, impossible to hide from. Then she looked away and Ethan could breathe again. "Now someone cut this cake before it becomes a fire hazard," Isabella said, gesturing to the candles. "I'm not paying for property damage tonight." The crowd surged forward. Ethan saw his opening and took it, moving quickly along the edge of the pool, keeping to the shadows where the string lights didn't quite reach. "Leaving already?" He froze. Isabella stood 3 feet away, a small plate with untouched cake in her hand. Up close, she was somehow more intimidating and less frightening at the same time. The severe expression softened slightly. Tired lines showed around her eyes. Yes," Ethan said, hating how his voice came out uncertain. "I have to pick up my daughter. School project, solar system diorama. Jupiter's giving us trouble." Why was he telling her about Jupiter? Why couldn't he just say family emergency like a normal person? But Isabella's expression shifted. Something that might have been amusement flickered across her face. "Jupiter's always trouble," she said. "Too many moons. What scale are you working at?" Ethan blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The diorama. What scale? Because if you're doing true proportional distance, Jupiter should be in another room entirely. Most people cheat and cluster everything near the sun." "We cheated," Ethan admitted. "Maya wanted to fit it on her desk." Smart compromise. Isabella set down the untouched cake. "You're Cross, right?" "Compliance?" Ethan Cross. "Yes." "You wrote the Mercer report, the one that saved us $3 million in potential fines." He hadn't expected her to know that. The report had gone through 5 layers of management before reaching anyone who mattered. "I just connected some documentation gaps," Ethan said. It was excellent work," Isabella cut in. "Thorough, clear, exactly what compliance should be." She paused. "Jenkins says you turned down every promotion offer." Ethan felt heat creep up his neck. "The senior positions require travel. I have a daughter. I can't." "I wasn't criticizing." Isabella's voice was softer now, almost tired. "I was noting that you made a choice. Not everyone does. Most people just complain about their constraints while accepting every opportunity that makes those constraints worse." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Around them, the party continued. Laughter, clinking glasses, someone telling a story that involved dramatic hand gestures. "I should go," he said finally. "Maya's waiting." "Of course." Isabella stepped aside. "Give Jupiter my regards." Ethan managed a smile and started toward the gate again. He'd made it 5 steps when Jenkins materialized out of the crowd, red-faced and holding 2 champagne glasses. "Cross, there you are. Come on, man, you can't leave yet. Ms. Reed hasn't made the toast." "I already made the toast, Jenkins," Isabella called from behind them. "The real toast," Jenkins insisted, shoving a glass into Ethan's hand. "The traditional one. Someone has to make the joke." Ethan's stomach sank. "What joke?" "You know, the birthday joke. Someone always does it." Jenkins was slightly drunk, Ethan realized. Not falling down drunk, but loose enough to ignore the panic in Ethan's eyes. "Come on, Cross. You're good at this stuff. You're always making Maya laugh with those dad jokes." "That's different." "Ms. Reed," Jenkins called out, loud enough to turn heads. "Cross here wants to make the traditional birthday toast." No. No, no, no. This was not happening. Isabella turned, one eyebrow raised. The crowd quieted again, sensing entertainment. Ethan wanted to murder Jenkins, professionally, with documentation. But now everyone was looking at him, including Isabella Reed, whose expression had gone carefully neutral in a way that suggested she was either very amused or very dangerous. "I don't," Ethan started. "Come on, Cross," someone shouted. "Don't leave her hanging." His phone buzzed. Maya. "Dad, when are you coming home? Jupiter's moons keep falling off." He looked at Isabella. at the crowd, at Jenkins, who was grinning like he'd just done Ethan the biggest favor in the world. And Ethan's tired brain, the part that ran on too much coffee and too little sleep, the part that made stupid decisions at 8:47 p.m. on a Friday when he should have been home 15 minutes ago, that part opened his mouth and said, "Well, I guess according to tradition, I should just marry you and get it over with." The joke landed like a dead bird on the pool deck. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Ethan's brain caught up with his mouth approximately 2 seconds too late. Horror flooded through him. Had he really just, to his CEO, in front of the entire executive team? Someone laughed nervously. Then someone else. The tension started to break. "Tonight," Isabella said clearly. "My place. Bring a ring." The laughter stopped. Isabella's expression hadn't changed. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't joking. She was looking at Ethan with the same focused intensity she probably used in hostile board meetings. "I'm sorry?" Ethan managed. "You made the proposal," Isabella said. "I'm accepting. Tonight. My apartment. Bring a ring." She checked her watch. "Let's say midnight. That gives you 3 hours to decide if you meant it." She couldn't be serious. This was a counter joke, right? A way of shutting down his stupidity with an even more absurd response? But Isabella Reed didn't joke. Everyone knew that. She negotiated. She strategized. She calculated. She didn't joke. "I should go," Ethan said, his voice coming from very far away. "Maya's project—" "Of course," Isabella said smoothly. "Family first. Midnight, Mr. Cross. Or never." She turned and walked back toward the cake, leaving Ethan standing frozen by the pool, holding champagne he still hadn't drunk, while the party slowly, uncertainly, resumed around him. Jenkins clapped him on the shoulder. "Man, she got you good!" "That was hilarious!" Ethan nodded numbly and headed for the gate, his heart hammering against his ribs. It was a joke. Obviously a joke. A power move to embarrass the analyst who'd embarrassed himself. By Monday, this would be a funny story people told in the break room. Except Isabella Reed's eyes had been completely serious. And Ethan Cross, single father, man who never took risks, man who planned everything down to the minute, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something had just broken open in his carefully controlled life. Timon. He drove home on autopilot, his hands steady on the wheel while his brain spiraled through increasingly impossible scenarios. She wasn't serious. Of course she wasn't serious. CEOs didn't propose marriage to mid-level analysts because of bad jokes at birthday parties. That wasn't how the real world worked. But what if she was? "Stop it," Ethan told himself firmly. "You're tired. You're reading too much into an awkward moment. Go home. Help Maya with Jupiter. Forget this ever happened." The house was dark except for the living room lamp. Mrs. Chen met him at the door, gathering her knitting bag. "She's been working on that planet for 2 hours straight," Mrs. Chen said, shaking her head fondly. "Refused to take a break. She's just like you." "Thanks for staying late," Ethan said, pressing 320s into her hand. More than they'd agreed on, but Mrs. Chen always pretended not to notice when he overpaid. "Maya," he called, hanging up his jacket. "I'm home. How's Jupiter doing?" "Terrible," came the voice from the dining room. "The moons keep falling off, and the red spot looks like a stain, and I hate everything about this stupid planet." Ethan smiled and headed for the dining room, where his 9-year-old daughter sat surrounded by papier-mâché carnage, her dark hair escaping from its ponytail, paint smudges on her cheeks. She looked exactly like her mother had at that age. Same determined expression, same refusal to quit even when frustrated. The familiar ache settled in Ethan's chest, but gentler now. 4 years since Sarah's death. 4 years of learning to be both parents. The grief still came in waves, but the waves had spaces between them now, spaces where life happened. "Okay," Ethan said, sitting down beside Maya and surveying the damage. "Show me what we're working with." 2 hours later, Jupiter had 16 properly attached moons, a reasonably convincing red spot, and a proud 9-year-old admiring her work. "It's perfect," Maya declared. "It's pretty good," Ethan corrected gently. "Perfect doesn't exist in solar systems or school projects. Mrs. Martinez is going to love it." Mrs. Martinez is going to give you an A because you worked hard and didn't give up. Maya looked at him, suddenly serious. Dad? Are you okay? You seem weird tonight. Kids, they always knew. Just tired, honey. Long day at work. Did something bad happen? No, something confusing happened, but nothing bad. Maya accepted this, yawning. Can we watch one episode before bed? They couldn't. It was already past 10. But Ethan looked at his daughter's paint-smudged face and thought about Isabella Reed's words. You made a choice. Not everyone does. One episode, he said. But tomorrow we're both sleeping in, deal? Deal. They settled onto the couch, Maya curled against his side, some animated show about magical girls playing on the TV. Ethan watched without seeing, his mind drifting back to the party. Midnight. My apartment. Bring a ring. It was 10:47. Even if she'd been serious, which she wasn't, he didn't know where she lived. He didn't have her personal number. He couldn't just show up at a CEO's residence with a ring like some kind of... His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't check it, but Maya was absorbed in her show, and something made him look. Penthouse 4, Harbor Towers. Security will expect you. IR. Ethan's heart stopped. Another message came through immediately after. Jenkins gave me your number. Hope that's acceptable. You have 67 minutes to decide if this is real. Real. She was serious. Isabella Reed, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company, was serious about, what, marriage? To him? Because of a stupid joke? This was insane. This was impossible. This was... Maya shifted against his side, murmuring something about magical powers. Her hair smelled like strawberry shampoo and paint thinner. Her hand was relaxed on his arm, trusting and small. This was his life. This was what mattered. Not whatever game Isabella Reed was playing. Ethan locked his phone and didn't look at it again until Maya's episode ended and he'd carried her to bed, tucking her in under the constellation blanket she'd had since she was 5. Night, Dad, Maya mumbled, already half asleep. Night, honey. Love you. Love you more. It was their ritual, the words they said every night, the anchor of his entire existence. Ethan closed Maya's door softly and stood in the hallway, listening to the house settle around him. The refrigerator hummed. The heat clicked on. Normal sounds. Normal life. His phone showed 11:23. He should go to bed. He should delete those messages. He should forget Isabella Reed had ever looked at him with those serious, calculating eyes. Instead, Ethan walked to his bedroom and opened the small wooden box on his dresser. Sarah's engagement ring sat in blue velvet, a modest diamond on a simple band. He'd sold most of her jewelry after she died, not because he wanted to, but because 9-year-olds needed food and rent and school supplies more than he needed memories. But he'd kept the ring. 4 years later, it still felt wrong to touch it, like disturbing something sacred. Ethan picked up the ring, holding it to the light. The diamond caught and scattered it, tiny rainbows on his palm. This is crazy, he thought. This is absolutely insane. But he thought about the way Isabella had looked at him. Not flirtatious, not playful. Serious. Almost desperate underneath the control. You have 67 minutes to decide if this is real. Real. The word kept echoing. Real. As if they both knew this was something more than a joke, something more than a party game gone weird. As if she'd seen something in him that recognized something in her. 2 people who'd learned to survive alone. 2 people who'd forgotten how to ask for help. Ethan checked on Maya one more time, deeply asleep, dreaming whatever dreams 9-year-olds had. Mrs. Chen lived 2 houses down and had told him 1,000 times to call any time, day or night, emergencies or not. He grabbed his jacket, pocketed the ring, and walked out to his car before he could change his mind. Harbor Towers was exactly the kind of building Ethan expected. All glass and steel, and the kind of quiet that only extreme wealth could buy. The lobby had actual art on the walls, not prints. The security guard didn't ask questions, just checked a list and waved Ethan toward a private elevator. Penthouse 4, the guard said. Ms. Reed is expecting you. The elevator was mirrored on all sides. Ethan caught his reflection, tired eyes, jacket that didn't quite fit right anymore, hands shoved in his pockets because he didn't know what else to do with them. He looked like exactly what he was, a man out of his depth, holding a dead woman's ring, about to make a decision that could destroy everything he'd carefully built. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. Isabella stood by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor, still in the red dress, her back to him. The apartment was stunning, all clean lines and expensive furniture that somehow looked uncomfortable, nothing personal, nothing lived in, nothing like a home. "You came," Isabella said without turning around. "I'm not sure why," Ethan admitted. "Because you're curious, and because something in you recognized the truth." "What truth?" Isabella finally turned to face him. The severe expression had cracked slightly. She looked exhausted. "The truth that I wasn't joking," she said simply. "And neither were you. I was definitely joking." "No." Isabella moved closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood. "You were deflecting, making light of an impossible situation. But the core question was real. I saw it in your eyes before you said it." Ethan's mouth went dry. "What question?" "Whether someone like you could stand next to someone like me. Whether the distance between us could be crossed. Whether two people who've learned to survive alone could survive together." She stopped a few feet away. "I need to tell you something, and after I tell you, you'll understand why I accepted your proposal." It wasn't a proposal. "Ethan." His name in her mouth was strange and intimate. "Please, just listen." So he listened. And Isabella Reed, the most powerful woman he'd ever met, told him about a legacy clause buried in her family trust, about a deadline 48 hours away, about a board of directors waiting to remove her, about a company she'd built being dismantled by people who'd never believed a woman should lead it. She told him about choice and control, and what it meant to spend your whole life proving you deserved space in a room. And when she finished, she looked at him with those serious, exhausted eyes and said, "I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to stand beside me. For 48 hours, maybe longer, until this is over." Ethan stood in the penthouse, holding his dead wife's ring, looking at a woman he barely knew. Every rational cell in his brain screamed at him to leave. This was insane. This was dangerous. This would complicate everything. But he thought about Maya, sleeping peacefully because she trusted he would always come home. He thought about the life he'd built through sheer, stubborn survival. He thought about what it meant to stand between danger and someone who needed you. He thought about Isabella Reed standing alone in this expensive, empty apartment, making impossible choices because no one had ever taught her how to ask for help. "I have a daughter," Ethan said quietly. "I know. She comes first, always, no exceptions. I wouldn't expect anything else. And if this goes wrong, if this hurts her in any way, then you walk away," Isabella finished, "and I'll make sure you land somewhere soft. I'm asking for help, Ethan, not sacrifice." He pulled out the ring, looked at it one more time, feeling the weight of everything it represented. "I'm sorry, Sarah," he thought, "but I think you'd understand this. You always understood standing up for people who needed it." "Okay," Ethan said, "I'll do it." Isabella's expression didn't change, but something in her posture softened. Relief, maybe, or recognition. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Ethan said. "I still have no idea what I'm doing." "That makes two of us." Isabella almost smiled. "Do you want to see the prenup?" "My lawyers?" "No." She blinked. "No? If I'm doing this, I'm trusting you. Either that matters or it doesn't." Ethan met her eyes. "So no prenup, no lawyers, just two people making an impossible choice." For the first time all night, Isabella Reed looked genuinely surprised. "You're not what I expected," she said softly. "Neither are you." Thunder cracked outside, rattling the windows. The storm that had been threatening all evening finally broke, rain hammering against the glass. Isabella held out her hand. Ethan took it. And somewhere in the distance, a clock chimed midnight, marking the moment when two strangers became something else entirely. Something that might save them both, or destroy everything they'd ever built. The marriage license office opened at 8 on Saturday morning. Ethan arrived at 7:15 with 2 cups of coffee and the growing certainty that he'd lost his mind. Isabella was already there, standing under the concrete overhang in a tailored navy suit that looked criminally expensive for a government building. She'd pulled her hair back in the same severe style from the night before, but in the gray morning light, Ethan could see the exhaustion more clearly. Dark circles under her eyes, a tension in her shoulders that spoke of a sleepless night. "You came," she said, accepting the coffee he offered. "I told you I would." People say a lot of things at midnight that they regret by morning. Isabella sipped the coffee, then looked at him with something like surprise. "This is perfect. How did you know?" "Know what?" "2 shots espresso, half cream, no sugar." Ethan shrugged. "You mentioned it once during the all-hands meeting last year. Someone brought you the wrong coffee, and you explained very precisely what you actually wanted." Isabella stared at him. "You remembered my coffee order from a year ago?" "I remember most things." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "Compliance analyst. Kind of the job." "That's not the job. That's just you." Before Ethan could respond, the doors unlocked and a tired-looking clerk waved them inside. The building smelled like floor cleaner and bureaucracy. Forms, fluorescent lights, the mundane machinery of legal unions. They sat in plastic chairs while the clerk reviewed their identification. Isabella had brought a folder thick with documentation, proof of residency, birth certificates, everything organized with the same precision she probably used for board meetings. Ethan had brought his wallet and a sense of surreal detachment. "Any previous marriages?" the clerk asked, not looking up. "Yes," Ethan said. "My wife died 4 years ago." "I'm sorry for your loss. Death certificate?" He slid it across the desk, the paper worn soft from being handled too many times in those first terrible months. Isabella's hand moved slightly, as if to touch his arm, then stopped. "And you, Ms. Reed?" "No previous marriages." The clerk made notes, stamped things, passed more forms across the desk. The whole process was shockingly impersonal. "Sign here, initial there. Do you understand this is a legal contract binding under state law?" "Yes." Yes, they understood. Ethan's hand was steady as he signed. He'd expected to feel something dramatic, fear, panic, the weight of betraying Sarah's memory. Instead, he felt oddly calm. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about replacing what he'd lost. This was about standing beside someone who needed him, for reasons that made a strange kind of sense in the cold morning light. "You'll need 2 witnesses," the clerk said. "Do you have anyone waiting?" Isabella's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "No." "We can provide courthouse witnesses for a small fee." "That won't be necessary." The voice came from behind them. Ethan turned to find an older man in an expensive overcoat, silver hair immaculately styled, watching them with eyes that calculated everything and revealed nothing. "Marcus," Isabella said, and her voice had gone completely flat. "What are you doing here?" "Making sure my goddaughter doesn't make a catastrophic mistake." Marcus moved closer, and Ethan felt the temperature in the room drop. "Isabella, a word, privately." "No." "This is absurd. You can't possibly—" "I said no." Isabella stood, and suddenly she was every inch the CEO Ethan had seen in boardrooms. "You can witness the marriage or you can leave. Those are your options." Marcus's eyes shifted to Ethan, assessing him the way you might assess a used car you suspected was about to break down. "And who exactly are you?" "Ethan Cross," Ethan said, standing as well. He didn't extend his hand. Something told him Marcus wouldn't take it. "The compliance analyst." Marcus's tone made it sound like an insult. "How convenient. How much is she paying you?" "Marcus," Isabella's voice was sharp now, dangerous. "That's enough." "Is it? Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a desperate woman making a spectacular error in judgment." Marcus turned back to Isabella. "Your grandfather wrote that clause to protect you, to ensure you wouldn't be alone, vulnerable. To control me," Isabella cut in. "Let's be honest about what it was. To ensure the company stayed in family hands." Marcus's composure cracked slightly. And now you're throwing that away on some stranger you pulled from the office pool because you're too stubborn to accept that maybe, just maybe, you need actual help. I am accepting help. Isabella's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more forceful. Just not from you. The silence that followed was sharp enough to draw blood. The clerk cleared her throat. If you'd like to postpone, we wouldn't, Isabella said. Marcus, you can stay and sign as a witness, or I'll ask the clerk to call someone else. But either way, this is happening. Marcus looked at Ethan again, and this time his expression was different. Not angry, almost pitying. You have no idea what you're walking into, he said quietly. No, Ethan agreed. I don't, but I'm walking into it anyway. Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Fine, Marcus moved to the desk. But when this falls apart, and it will, remember that I tried to stop it. The second witness turned out to be the clerk's supervisor, a woman who looked like she'd seen every possible variation of human decision-making and had stopped being surprised years ago. She signed without comment, stamped another form, and handed Isabella a certificate that declared them legally married. Just like that. No ceremony, no vows. No moment where Ethan slipped the ring onto Isabella's finger while promising forever. Just paperwork and witnesses and the mechanical clicking of a stamp that said, official, legal, binding. They walked out into the parking lot together. Marcus had disappeared without another word. The morning was gray and cold, threatening more rain. Well, Isabella said, that's done. That's done, Ethan echoed. They stood beside their separate cars, married strangers in a government parking lot, neither quite sure what happened next. I need to brief you, Isabella said finally, about the situation, the full extent of it. Okay. Not here. My office. There are documents, financial records, things you need to see. She hesitated. Unless you need to get back to Maya. Mrs. Chen's with her until noon. I have time. Isabella nodded. Follow me. The drive to Reed Pharmaceutical took 20 minutes through Saturday morning traffic. Ethan followed Isabella's sleek sedan in his aging Honda, feeling the growing gap between their worlds with every mile. Her car probably cost more than he made in 2 years. The building she pulled into, all glass and modern architecture, represented wealth he couldn't even properly conceptualize. The parking garage was nearly empty on a weekend. Their footsteps echoed as they walked to the private elevator, the one that went directly to the executive floor. I've never been up here, Ethan said as the elevator climbed. No reason you would have. Compliance is on 12. Do you come in on Saturdays often? I come in every day. Isabella said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Weekends, holidays, the company doesn't stop. When do you stop? She looked at him, startled. I don't. The elevator opened into a reception area that was all clean lines and expensive art. Isabella's office was at the end of a hallway, behind a door that required both a key card and a fingerprint to open. Inside was exactly what Ethan expected, and somehow more human than he'd imagined. Yes, there was the massive desk and the view that overlooked half the city, but there were also books, real paper books, not just decorative ones. A coffee maker that looked well used, a blanket folded over the back of the couch, suggesting she sometimes slept here. Isabella went straight to a filing cabinet, pulling out folders with the efficiency of someone who knew exactly where everything was. The trust was established by my grandfather 43 years ago, she said, spreading documents across the conference table. Standard structure for wealthy families, assets protected, distributed according to specific terms. Ethan moved closer, scanning the papers. Legal language, dense and precise. Here, Isabella pointed to a section highlighted in yellow. Clause 17, subsection 4, the marriage requirement. Ethan read it twice, his compliance-trained brain catching the implications. This says you have to be married by your 35th birthday or control of your shares transfers to the board for proper oversight pending suitable marriage. He looked up. Your birthday was yesterday. Technically, it was 3 days ago. The party was delayed. Isabella's mouth twisted. I have until Monday at 5 p.m., 47 hours from now. And if you don't meet the requirement? The board gets voting control of my shares, which means they can remove me as CEO, which means Marcus and his allies can restructure the company however they want. She pulled out another document. They've already drafted the plans. I have copies. Ethan took the paper she offered, reading quickly. The more he read, the worse it got. They're going to sell off the research division, he said slowly. The experimental drug programs, the long-term development, all of it, too expensive, too risky, not enough immediate return. Isabella's voice was bitter. Never mind that the research division is developing treatments for rare diseases that no one else will touch because there's no profit in it. Never mind that we're 3 years into a program that could revolutionize pediatric cancer treatment. Marcus wants quarterly earnings. He wants stock prices. He wants safe, predictable, profitable. And you want to actually help people. I want to run the company my grandfather built, the one that believed medicine should serve humanity, not just shareholders. Isabella sat down heavily. But apparently wanting that while unmarried makes me unstable and emotional and in need of male guidance. Ethan heard the fury under her controlled tone, the years of fighting to be taken seriously, the exhaustion of proving herself over and over to people who'd already decided she was unfit. Why me? He asked. You could have asked anyone, someone from your social circle, someone who knows how to navigate this world, because anyone from my social circle would see this as an opportunity. Isabella looked at him directly. A chance to gain influence, access, control. You're the only person I could think of who might actually just help. No agenda, no angle. You don't know that, you barely know me. I know you turned down 3 promotions to stay close to your daughter. I know you wrote a compliance report that cost the company nothing but saved us millions in potential problems. I know you remember coffee orders from a year ago. Isabella's expression softened slightly. I know you came to a stranger's penthouse at midnight because she asked for help. That tells me more than any background check ever could. Ethan wanted to argue, but she wasn't wrong. He had come. He had signed the papers. He had walked into this knowing nothing except that someone needed help, and he was apparently the kind of person who couldn't walk away from that. What happens on Monday? He asked instead. We present the marriage certificate to the board. They verify it meets the terms of the trust. Control stays with me. Isabella pulled out more files. But it's not going to be that simple. Marcus will challenge it. He'll claim the marriage is a sham, that I'm trying to circumvent the clause's intent, which you are. Which I absolutely am, but intent doesn't matter. The clause says married. It doesn't specify for love or for a minimum duration or with board approval. Married is married. Unless they can prove fraud. Isabella's eyes sharpened. Exactly. So we need to be convincing. No obvious signs this is purely transactional, which means... She hesitated. You should probably move in, at least temporarily, until this is resolved. Ethan's stomach dropped. Move in? To my apartment, just for appearances. If Marcus investigates, and he will, it needs to look real. Shared residence, shared life. She held up a hand before he could protest. I have 3 bedrooms. You and Maya would have your own space, and there's a school 2 blocks away that's significantly better than... No. The word came out harder than Ethan intended. Isabella stopped mid-sentence. I'm not uprooting my daughter's life, Ethan said firmly. She's been through enough. Her mother died. We moved twice trying to find stability. I'm not doing that to her again for corporate theater. Ethan, no. Maya stays in our house, in her school, with her friends. If you need me to be convincing, I'll spend nights at your place after she's asleep. I'll be there for breakfast meetings or whatever, but Maya's life doesn't change. That's non-negotiable. Isabella studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, we'll figure something else out. She made a note. But you should know that Marcus will dig. He'll look for any evidence this isn't legitimate. Then we'll be careful. Ethan looked at the document spread across the table. What else do I need to know? What followed was 3 hours of Isabella walking him through the complete situation, the board structure, the voting blocks, the allies and enemies, the financial pressures, the timeline. Ethan listened, asked questions, made notes. His compliance brain kicked in, seeing patterns, identifying risks. This was what he was good at, finding the gaps, the vulnerabilities, the places where systems could be exploited or defended. "Here's what I don't understand," he said finally. "Marcus is your godfather. Why is he doing this?" Isabella was quiet for a moment. "Marcus was my grandfather's business partner. When my grandfather died, Marcus expected to take over the company. Instead, the will left controlling interest to me. I was 28, fresh out of business school. Marcus thought I'd be easy to manipulate, a figurehead while he ran things. But you weren't." "No, I wasn't." Isabella's smile was sharp, and he spent the last 7 years trying to change that. The marriage clause was his insurance policy. He helped my grandfather write it, convinced him I'd need a husband's stabilizing influence. I think he expected me to marry someone suitable, someone he could control. Instead, I didn't marry at all. And now the deadline's here. So this whole thing is about power. Everything is about power. Isabella stood, moving to the window. The question is whether we have enough of it to survive. Ethan's phone buzzed. "Maya, Mrs. Chen says we can make pancakes. Can I use chocolate chips?" He smiled and typed back, "Yes, but save me some." Maya, "No promises, Dad." When he looked up, Isabella was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "She seems like a good kid," Isabella said. "She's the best kid." Ethan pocketed his phone. "She's the only thing that matters. I need you to understand that." "I do. Because if this gets complicated, if Maya gets hurt or confused or... Then you walk away," Isabella said firmly, "and I'll make sure she's protected. I promise you that, Ethan. Whatever happens, Maya comes first." Ethan wanted to believe her, needed to believe her, because he'd just legally bound himself to this woman, and if he couldn't trust her word, then he'd made a terrible mistake. "Okay," he said, "so what's next?" "Next, we wait for Marcus's move. He won't accept this quietly. He'll..." Isabella's phone rang, cutting her off. She glanced at the screen, and her expression went cold. "Speak of the devil," she muttered, answering. "Marcus." Ethan couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but he could watch Isabella's face shift through a dozen micro-expressions. Surprise, anger, calculation. "I see," she said finally. "And you're calling to threaten me or to gloat?" More talking on the other end. "No, absolutely not. You don't get to..." Isabella stopped, listening. Her jaw tightened. "Monday morning, 10 a.m. Fine. But, Marcus, don't expect me to make this easy." She ended the call and stood very still for a moment. "What happened?" Ethan asked. "Marcus filed an emergency board meeting for Monday morning, 2 hours before the deadline." Isabella's voice was tight. "He's going to challenge the marriage before I can even submit the certificate." "Can he do that?" "He's doing it. Whether he can succeed..." Isabella shook her head. "He must have something, some angle he thinks will work. The question is what?" Ethan thought about Marcus's expression in the marriage license office, the pity in his eyes when he'd looked at Ethan. "He's going to attack me," Ethan said slowly. "He'll say I'm not suitable, that you married beneath you, that it's obvious proof the marriage is a sham." Isabella's expression confirmed he was right. "It's the obvious play," she admitted. "You're not from our social class. You don't have the background, the connections, the wealth. He'll paint you as someone I grabbed out of desperation." Which is exactly what happened. Which is irrelevant. The clause doesn't require the board to approve my choice of husband. It just requires that I be married. But if they can prove fraud, they'd need evidence, hard evidence, not just suspicion. Isabella started pacing, her strategic mind clearly racing. "We have the license, the witnesses, the legal documentation. On paper, it's legitimate." "On paper," Ethan repeated. "But in reality?" Isabella stopped pacing and looked at him directly. "In reality, we're two strangers who got married to satisfy a corporate requirement. If Marcus gets us in a room and starts asking questions, how we met, why we fell in love, what our plans are, we'll fall apart in minutes. Then we need a story." Ethan pulled out his phone, opening a notes app. "Something consistent, something believable." "Ethan, we can't just fabricate. We're not fabricating. We're deciding which truths to emphasize." He looked at her. "How did we meet?" Isabella blinked at the sudden shift to practicality. "At work. 3 years ago." "Too vague." Be specific. When? Where? I... I don't remember meeting you specifically. You were just another analyst. September 14th, 3 years ago. You were in the elevator heading to a meeting with the FDA review team. Someone had brought you the wrong coffee. You explained very precisely what you actually wanted, and I was standing there listening because I'd just started and I was trying to learn everything about everyone. Isabella stared at him. You remember that? I told you. I remember most things. Ethan made a note. So that's our meet cute, elevator, wrong coffee. I paid attention when no one else did. That's not romantic. It doesn't have to be romantic. It has to be real. Ethan continued making notes. When did we start dating? We didn't... In the story, Isabella, when did we start dating? She sat down slowly, beginning to understand what he was doing. 6 months ago, she said, quietly. We kept it private because of workplace policies. Good. Why? Why what? Why did you say yes when I asked you out? What did I do that made you interested? Isabella was quiet for a long moment, thinking. You never treated me differently, she said finally. Everyone else either feared me or flattered me. You just did your job well and went home. Like I was a person, not a position. Okay. And what did you do that made me interested? I don't... Isabella stopped. What did I do? You remember people's coffee orders, Ethan said. You mentioned it once in a meeting, said that leadership was about the details, knowing what people needed before they asked. I thought about that for weeks. Thought about someone who led like that. Someone who cared about the small things. Something shifted in Isabella's expression. We're building a story out of real moments. Real moments make the best lies, Ethan said, because they're not lies. They're just reframing. They spent the next hour building their narrative, where they'd had their first date, a quiet restaurant downtown, nothing fancy, because Isabella had said she was tired of performance. When they decided to get serious 3 months ago, after Isabella had met Maya and seen how Ethan was as a father. Why they'd gotten married so quickly. Because life was short and sometimes you knew. By the time they finished, they had a story that was consistent, believable, and grounded in enough truth that they could sell it. We should practice, Isabella said. Questions they might ask. Okay. How do I take my coffee? Black, 2 sugars. Wrong. Black, no sugar. You're thinking of Maya's hot chocolate. Isabella made a note, frustrated with herself. What's my favorite food? I don't know. Exactly. See? This won't work. What is your favorite food? Ethan asked. I don't have one. I eat for fuel, not pleasure. That's depressing. That's efficiency. That's sad, Ethan corrected gently. When's the last time you had a meal just because you enjoyed it? Isabella opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. I don't remember. They looked at each other across the conference table, 2 people learning the shape of each other's loneliness. Okay, Ethan said quietly. New question. If you could eat anything right now, no restrictions, what would it be? That's not relevant to... Just answer, Isabella sighed. My grandmother used to make this soup. Chicken, vegetables, nothing fancy, but she'd make it when I was stressed or sick or overwhelmed. It always made things feel manageable. Can you make it? I never learned. She died before I thought to ask. Ethan made a note on his phone. I'll figure it out. Ethan, you don't have to. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Which means I learn your favorite soup and you learn that I'm terrible at making anything more complicated than sandwiches, but I try anyway because Maya deserves better than takeout every night. Isabella laughed, surprising both of them. It was a real laugh, not the polite sound she probably used at board meetings. It transformed her face completely. What? Ethan asked. Nothing, I can't remember the last time someone wanted to make me soup. Everyone deserves soup, Ethan said seriously. That's not even a marriage thing. That's just basic human decency. His phone buzzed again. Mrs. Chen, Maya says you promised to watch a movie when you get home. She's already picked 3 options. I need to go, Ethan said, standing. Maya's waiting. Of course. Isabella stood as well. Thank you, for today, for all of this. Don't thank me yet. We still have to survive Monday. We will. Isabella walked him to the elevator. Ethan, what you said earlier about Maya coming first, I meant what I said. Whatever happens, I'll protect her. I believe you, Ethan said. And surprisingly, he did. The elevator doors opened. Ethan stepped inside, then turned back. Isabella, one more thing. If Marcus asks why I married you, what should I say? Isabella considered this. What would you say if it were real? Ethan thought about it, about the woman standing in front of him, exhausted and fighting and refusing to break even when the world demanded it. I'd say you reminded me that strong doesn't mean alone, he said quietly, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. The elevator doors closed on Isabella's surprised expression, and Ethan rode down alone, wondering what exactly he'd just committed to. When he got home, Maya was waiting with 3 movie options and a smile that made every complicated decision worth it. They made popcorn, curled up on the couch, and Ethan let himself pretend for a few hours that his life was still simple and uncomplicated. But that night, after Maya was asleep, he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Monday, about board meetings and emergency challenges, and a woman who'd built her armor so carefully that she'd forgotten how to take it off. His phone buzzed. Isabella, thank you for today. Get some rest. Monday will be difficult. Ethan, we'll handle it. Sleep well. Isabella, I don't sleep well, but I appreciate the sentiment. Ethan stared at that message for a long time before typing. The soup. Did it have carrots? A pause. Then, yes. And celery. Why? Ethan, just planning ahead. Good night, Isabella. Isabella, good night, Ethan. He set his phone down and closed his eyes, knowing sleep would be elusive. Somewhere across the city, Isabella was probably still awake too, preparing for battle. 2 strangers bound together by paperwork and desperation, about to face a room full of people who wanted them to fail. But as Ethan finally drifted toward sleep, he thought about Isabella's laugh, about the way she'd looked when he'd promised to learn her grandmother's soup recipe, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they could pull this off. Not because their story was perfect, but because it was real enough to matter. Sunday morning arrived with rain drumming against Ethan's bedroom window and Maya's voice calling from the kitchen. Dad, you said we could make pancakes! Ethan dragged himself out of bed, his phone showing 3 missed calls from Isabella and a text sent at 5:47 a.m. We need to meet. Marcus sent the board packet. It's worse than I thought. He texted back, give me 2 hours. Have to do breakfast with Maya first. The response came immediately. Of course. I'll come to you. Send me your address. Ethan stared at the message, his brain still foggy with sleep. Isabella Reed, CEO, coming to his modest 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood where the biggest excitement was the annual block party. Coming to see how normal people lived, how single dads made pancakes on Sunday mornings while trying not to think about emergency board meetings. He sent the address and headed to the kitchen, where Maya had already pulled out every ingredient they owned and spread them across the counter like a culinary crime scene. Chocolate chips and blueberries, she announced, and I want to make the shapes this time. Deal, but you have to help clean up after. Always. Maya grinned, then her expression shifted. Dad, you were really late coming home yesterday, and you left again last night after I went to bed. Mrs. Chen said you had work stuff. Ethan's hand stilled on the mixing bowl. He'd been dreading this conversation, hoping he could put it off until after Monday, until he knew whether this whole insane plan would even work. I did have work stuff, he said carefully. Something important came up. More important than Jupiter's moons? Nothing's more important than Jupiter's moons. But sometimes grown-up work has deadlines that can't wait. Maya accepted this, pouring chocolate chips into the batter with the focused intensity she brought to everything she cared about. Is it the scary boss lady? The one whose birthday party you went to? Ms. Reed isn't scary. She just has a lot of responsibilities. Mrs. Chen says rich people are always scary because they forget what normal feels like. Ethan bit back a smile. Mrs. Chen had opinions about everything, delivered with the confidence of someone who'd raised 6 kids and wasn't impressed by anyone. Ms. Reed is coming over this morning, Ethan said, measuring flour to avoid meeting Maya's eyes. To talk about work. She'll probably be here when you're eating breakfast. Here? Like in our house? Is that okay? Maya considered this with the seriousness of a 9-year-old contemplating a major life event. Do I have to be fancy? You have to be yourself, which is perfect. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 a.m., and Ethan opened it to find Isabella standing on his front porch in jeans and a sweater, holding a paper bag from the bakery downtown. She looked different without the power suit, younger, more uncertain, somehow more real. I brought bagels, she said. I didn't know if Maya liked them, but the woman at the bakery said kids usually prefer cinnamon raisin, so I got those and also plain and everything and one with chocolate chips because... She stopped, realizing she was rambling. I brought too many bagels. There's no such thing as too many bagels, Ethan said, stepping aside to let her in. Come in. Maya's in the kitchen attempting to defy the laws of pancake physics. Isabella followed him through the small living room, past the couch with the permanent indent from their movie nights, past the bookshelf overflowing with Maya's fantasy novels, and Ethan's compliance manuals, past the wall covered in Maya's artwork and school photos. He watched Isabella take it all in, seeing his life through her eyes. The worn carpet, the paint that needed touching up, the home that was loved but clearly lived in by people who counted every dollar. Maya looked up when they entered the kitchen, chocolate smudged on her cheek, pancake batter in her hair. Hi, she said, eyeing Isabella with frank curiosity. You're the scary boss lady. Maya, Ethan said warningly. But Isabella laughed, that real laugh from yesterday, the one that transformed her face. I've been called worse, and you must be Maya. Your dad talks about you constantly. He does? Jupiter's moons, the solar system diorama, how you refuse to quit even when things are hard. Isabella set the bagels on the counter. He's very proud of you. Maya's face lit up, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest. This was dangerous territory, letting his two worlds collide like this. But it was too late now. Do you want pancakes? Maya asked. Dad's teaching me how to make shapes, but they mostly look like blobs. They look like abstract art, Ethan corrected. And yes, Ms. Reed might want... Isabella said quietly. You can call me Isabella. The three of them made pancakes together in a kitchen that was too small for comfortable maneuvering. Maya narrated her technique. Isabella asked surprisingly knowledgeable questions about batter consistency, and Ethan tried not to think about how surreal this was. His daughter and his fake wife cooking breakfast while rain pattered against the windows and the clock ticked closer to tomorrow's deadline. They ate at the kitchen table, Maya chattering about school and her friends, and the upcoming science fair where she wanted to build a volcano but was worried about the mess. Isabella listened with an attention that seemed genuine, asking follow-up questions, treating Maya like her opinions actually mattered. Okay, kiddo, Ethan said when the plates were clear. The grown-ups need to talk about boring work stuff. Can you give us some space? Can I watch TV? 1 episode, then you need to work on your reading log. Maya groaned dramatically but headed for the living room, and Ethan heard the familiar opening theme of her favorite show moments later. Isabella pulled a folder from her bag, her expression shifting back to business mode. But something of the softness from breakfast remained, like she couldn't quite rebuild her armor in a kitchen that smelled like maple syrup and chocolate chips. Marcus sent this to all board members last night, she said, sliding papers across the table. It's his opening move. Ethan read quickly, his compliance analyst brain catching the implications with each paragraph. Marcus had built a comprehensive case arguing that Isabella's marriage was fraudulent, designed solely to circumvent the trust's intent. He'd compiled evidence, the timeline of the relationship, the lack of any public acknowledgement, the suspicious convenience of the wedding date. But the truly damaging part came in the final section, where Marcus had done a detailed background investigation on Ethan himself. He knows about Sarah, Ethan said quietly, reading the section that outlined his late wife's medical history, the costs of her treatment, the debt that had followed. He's going to argue I married you for money. He's going to argue that I exploited a vulnerable single father who was drowning financially. Isabella's voice was tight. That I found someone desperate enough to accept any arrangement. Except I'm not desperate. Aren't you? Isabella met his eyes. Ethan, I've seen your financial records. Marcus included them in his packet. The second mortgage, the payment plans for Maya's school, the medical debt you're still carrying from 4 years ago. You're one major emergency away from losing everything. Ethan wanted to argue, but the numbers didn't lie. He'd been treading water for so long that he'd forgotten what drowning looked like. That doesn't mean I married you for money, he said instead. I know that. You know that. But Marcus is going to paint a very convincing picture of a desperate man making a desperate choice. Isabella pulled out more papers. And then there's this. The new documents detailed every interaction Ethan had ever had with Isabella at work. Every elevator ride, every meeting, every email. Marcus had somehow obtained internal communications, timestamps, everything needed to prove that until Friday night, Ethan and Isabella had been nothing more than CEO and mid-level employee. How did he get all this? Ethan asked. Marcus has allies in IT, people who owe him favors. Isabella's jaw tightened. He's been preparing for this, maybe for years, waiting for me to make exactly this kind of mistake. From the living room came Maya's laughter at something on TV, bright and uncomplicated. Ethan thought about the life he'd built for her, the stability he'd fought for. One wrong move tomorrow, and it could all unravel. We could stop, Isabella said quietly. I could face the board, admit the marriage was arranged, accept the consequences. You could walk away clean, get an annulment, go back to your life. No. Ethan, no. He looked at her directly. We started this. We finish it together. You don't understand what you're risking. Marcus won't just discredit the marriage. He'll destroy your reputation, make it impossible for you to work in this industry again. You have Maya to think about. I am thinking about Maya, Ethan cut in. I'm thinking about what kind of man I want her to see when she looks at me. Someone who runs when things get hard, or someone who stands beside people who need him, even when it's complicated? Isabella stared at him, something raw and unguarded in her expression. You really believe that? That this is worth fighting for? I believe you deserve better than Marcus and his corporate vultures picking apart everything you've built. I believe that trust clause is archaic and offensive and designed to control you. Ethan gathered the papers, scanning them again with fresh eyes. And I believe Marcus made a mistake. What mistake? He's so focused on proving the marriage is fake that he's not looking at what's real. Ethan pulled out his phone, opening his note app from yesterday. We built a story based on truth, real moments, real interactions. Marcus can prove we weren't dating publicly, but he can't prove we weren't connecting privately. He can show the timeline, but he can't show what was happening inside it. Isabella leaned forward, catching his energy. You're talking about fighting him on his own ground. I'm talking about using his evidence against him. Look, Ethan pointed to one of Marcus's documents. He shows every elevator ride we shared, 16 times in 3 years. He thinks that proves we barely knew each other. Doesn't it? Or it proves we had 16 opportunities to connect, 16 moments where we could have been building something that no one else saw because we kept it private. Ethan was thinking out loud now, the patterns clicking together. He shows the emails. All professional, all business. But what if that was intentional? What if we were being careful because of workplace policies? We'd need proof that we discussed keeping the relationship quiet. We have proof. Your own HR manual requires disclosure of romantic relationships between executives and employees. We didn't disclose because we knew it would complicate things. Maybe cost me my job. So we waited until we were serious enough that it was worth the risk. Isabella's eyes widened. And we got married quickly because the trust deadline forced our hand. We'd been planning to wait longer, handle it more carefully, but circumstances demanded action. Exactly. Everything Marcus sees as evidence of fraud, we reframe as evidence of caution, of two people trying to navigate an impossible situation as responsibly as possible. They spent the next 2 hours rebuilding their defense, finding the truth buried inside Marcus's accusations. Every piece of evidence could be interpreted 2 ways, and Ethan's compliance training had taught him exactly how to construct alternative narratives from the same facts. Maya wandered in eventually, bored with TV, and found them surrounded by papers at the kitchen table. "You're still working?" she asked, disappointed. "Almost done," Ethan promised. "What do you need, honey?" "I was going to make lunch. Can Isabella stay?" Ethan glanced at Isabella, expecting her to decline politely, but instead she said, "I'd like that, if your dad says it's okay." So they made grilled cheese sandwiches, Maya's specialty, and ate lunch while rain continued to drum against the windows. Maya told Isabella about her science fair idea, about the volcano that would definitely make a huge mess, but would also be amazing. Isabella listened and asked questions, and at one point mentioned that Reed Pharmaceutical had an educational outreach program that provided materials for school science projects. "Really?" Maya's eyes went wide. "Like real science stuff?" "Real science stuff. Beakers, test tubes, safety goggles, the whole thing." Isabella smiled. "I could have someone send information to your teacher." "That would be so cool. Dad, did you hear that?" "I heard," Ethan said, watching his daughter's excitement and feeling the complexity of the situation deepen. This wasn't just about corporate deadlines anymore. Maya was getting attached, seeing Isabella as a person who brought bagels and listened and promised science equipment. When this ended, and it would end eventually, Maya would have questions he didn't know how to answer. After lunch, Maya retreated to her room to work on the reading log she'd been avoiding. Isabella helped Ethan clean up, the two of them moving around the small kitchen in a rhythm that was becoming surprisingly natural. "She's wonderful," Isabella said quietly, rinsing plates. "You've done an incredible job with her." "I've done my best. Some days that's enough, some days it isn't." "It's more than enough." Isabella paused, hands still in the soapy water. "Ethan, about tomorrow. If things go badly, if Marcus succeeds in challenging the marriage, then we appeal. We fight. We don't just give up. There may not be time to appeal. If the board votes before the 5 p.m. deadline, then we make sure the vote goes our way." Ethan dried a plate, thinking, who on the board is actually loyal to you? Not to Marcus, not neutral, actively on your side. Isabella considered. Patricia Chen, head of research, David Okonkwo, chief medical officer, maybe Jennifer Walsh from operations, though she's unpredictable. 3 votes out of how many? 9 total. I need 5 to maintain control. So we need 2 more. Who's persuadable? Thomas Brennan might be. He's old school, traditional, but he respects competence. If we can prove the marriage is legitimate enough to satisfy the clause, he'll vote with us just to avoid the legal mess of challenging it. That's 4. Who's the 5th? Isabella shook her head. There isn't one. The other 4 are Marcus's people. They'll vote however he tells them to. Ethan set down the towel, thinking through the problem. Then we don't need a 5th vote. We need to change the question they're voting on. I don't follow. Marcus framed this as a vote on whether the marriage is fraudulent. That's subjective, easy to manipulate. But what if we reframe it as a vote on whether the marriage meets the technical requirements of the trust clause? That's objective. Either I'm legally married to you or I'm not. And we have a certificate that says I am. Isabella's expression shifted to something that looked like hope. So we force a procedural vote instead of a subjective judgment. Exactly. And if Brennan's as traditional as you say, he'll hate the idea of the board overstepping its authority to make subjective determinations about your personal life. That could work. Isabella was already thinking ahead, calculating angles. But Marcus will fight it. He'll argue that the board has a fiduciary duty to investigate potential fraud. Let him argue. You have lawyers, right? People who can be at this meeting? Of course. Then have them ready to cite precedent, procedural rules, anything that supports keeping this vote narrow and technical. We don't give Marcus room to make it about whether he thinks we're really in love. We make it about whether we met the legal requirement, period. They worked through the strategy until late afternoon when Ethan realized he needed to start thinking about dinner. Isabella offered to leave, but Maya appeared in the doorway asking if Isabella wanted to stay for spaghetti, and somehow it was decided. Cooking dinner with Isabella and Maya felt surreal and domestic and dangerously normal. Maya set the table, including a place for Isabella without being asked. Isabella helped with the sauce, following Ethan's directions with the same focus she probably brought to merger negotiations. They ate together, and Maya told embarrassing stories about Ethan burning toast and setting off the smoke alarm, and Isabella laughed in a way that suggested she hadn't laughed at dinner in a very long time. After Maya went to bed, Ethan and Isabella sat at the kitchen table with lukewarm coffee, the house quiet around them. "Thank you," Isabella said, "for today, for letting me into your life like this. You brought bagels. That's the price of admission." "I'm serious, Ethan. She gestured around the kitchen. "This is real. The home you've built, the relationship with Maya. It's more real than anything I've managed to create in 35 years. You've created a company that helps people, that develops drugs for diseases no one else will touch. That's real too. That's professional success. It's not the same as a daughter who makes you volcano-shaped pancakes and tells stories at dinner." Isabella's voice was quiet. "I've spent so long building my career that I forgot to build a life." Ethan thought about his own choices, the promotions he'd turned down, the opportunities he'd let pass because they didn't fit with being Maya's dad. He'd always thought of them as sacrifices, but sitting here, watching Isabella recognize what she'd lost, he wondered if maybe he'd been the lucky one. "It's not too late," he said. "To build a life, I mean. You're 35, not 95. 35 and married to a stranger because I ran out of time to do it properly. Married to someone who thinks you deserve better than Marcus's corporate coup." Ethan met her eyes. "That's not nothing, Isabella." She held his gaze for a long moment, and something passed between them that felt significant in ways Ethan couldn't quite name. Understanding, maybe. A recognition that they were both stumbling through this, making it up as they went. "I should go," Isabella said finally. "Let you get some rest before tomorrow." Ethan walked her to the door. Rain had stopped, leaving the street shining under streetlights. Isabella's car looked absurdly expensive parked in front of his house, like a piece of abstract art dropped into a Norman Rockwell painting. "Ethan?" Isabella paused at the door. "Tomorrow, when we walk into that boardroom, I need you to know something. Whatever happens, I'm grateful. For your help, for your kindness, for the way you've treated this as if it matters, even though it's objectively insane." "It does matter," Ethan said. "And it's not insane, it's just complicated." Isabella smiled, sad and genuine. "I'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't be late." "I'm never late." "I know, it's one of the things I like about you." She left before he could respond, her taillights disappearing around the corner. Ethan stood on his porch for a long moment, breathing in the rain-clean air, trying to process the strangeness of his life. 2 days ago, he'd been a single dad focused solely on Jupiter's moons and quarterly compliance reports. Now he was married to a CEO, preparing for a corporate battle, cooking spaghetti for a woman who'd forgotten what normal tasted like. His phone buzzed. "Isabella, thank you for the spaghetti, and the strategy session, and for letting Maya share her volcano plans. Tonight felt like the first real thing I've experienced in months." Ethan stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. "What did you say to that? How did you respond when someone thanked you for basic human connection as if it were a rare gift?" He typed, "Thank you for the bagels. All 12 of them. Maya and I will be eating cinnamon raisin for days." Isabella, "There were only 8 bagels." Ethan, "Felt like 12. I'm not great at math past bedtime." Isabella, "You're a compliance analyst. You're literally paid to be great at math." Ethan, "I'm paid to be great at math during business hours. After 8 p.m., I revert to counting on my fingers." He could almost hear her laugh through the phone. Isabella, "Get some sleep, Ethan. Tomorrow we face the wolves." Ethan, "Together." Isabella, "Together." He went to bed but didn't sleep, his mind running through scenarios and strategies and all the ways tomorrow could go catastrophically wrong. Around midnight, he got up and started making notes, outlining responses to every possible attack Marcus might launch. At 2 a.m., his phone buzzed again. Isabella, "Are you awake?" Ethan, "Unfortunately, yes." Isabella, "Me too. Can't stop thinking about what Marcus might have planned that we haven't anticipated." Ethan. Want to talk it through? Isabella. Would you mind? They spent the next hour texting back and forth, wargaming scenarios, building backup plans for their backup plans. Somewhere around 3 a.m., the conversation shifted from strategy to something more personal. Isabella. Can I ask you something about Sarah? Ethan's chest tightened, but he typed, yes. Isabella. Do you feel like this is betraying her memory? Getting married again, even if it's not real? Ethan thought about it for a long time before responding. Sarah made me promise something before she died. She made me promise I wouldn't stop living just because she couldn't anymore. She said I owed it to Maya to show her that life goes on, that loss doesn't mean the end of everything. Isabella. That sounds like she was an incredible person. Ethan. She was. And she would have liked you, I think. She had a thing about people who fought for what they believed in. Isabella. I'm not sure I'm fighting for beliefs anymore. Mostly just survival. Ethan. Sometimes survival is its own kind of belief. The belief that tomorrow matters enough to keep going. Isabella. When did you get so wise? Ethan. I'm not wise. I'm just tired enough that my filter's gone and the truth comes out. Isabella. I like the truth. It's refreshing. They kept texting until nearly 4 a.m. when exhaustion finally started winning against anxiety. The last message came from Isabella. Thank you for tonight. For all of this. I know I keep saying that, but I mean it. You make me feel less alone. Ethan stared at those words for a long time, something shifting in his chest. This had started as a transaction, a legal arrangement to satisfy a corporate requirement, but somewhere between the bagels and the spaghetti and the 3 a.m. strategy sessions, it had become something more complicated. He typed back, "You're not alone. Not anymore. Whatever happens tomorrow, we're in this together." When he finally fell asleep, the sky was already starting to lighten with the promise of Monday morning. The alarm would ring in 2 hours. The boardroom battle would begin in 5. But for now, in the quiet space between Sunday and Monday, Ethan let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a fighting chance. Not because their story was perfect, but because they'd built it together, piece by piece, truth by truth. And that had to count for something. It had to. The boardroom on the 23rd floor had windows that overlooked the entire city, as if the people who met here needed the constant reminder of everything they controlled. Ethan stood in the hallway outside, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time, acutely aware that the suit he wore, his only suit, purchased for Sarah's funeral 4 years ago, was outdated and ill-fitting compared to the tailored armor everyone else would be wearing. Isabella emerged from her office looking like she'd been forged specifically for this battle. Charcoal suit, hair pulled back severely, diamond earrings that caught the light like weapons. But when she saw Ethan, her expression softened almost imperceptibly. "You came early," she said. "Couldn't sleep. Figured I might as well be nervous here instead of at home." "Mrs. Chen has Maya?" "Until 3. Then my neighbor's daughter picks her up from school." Ethan had orchestrated the entire day's logistics with military precision, making sure Maya would never know her father was fighting for their financial survival in a glass tower downtown. Isabella checked her watch. 9:43. The meeting started at 10. "Our lawyers are already inside," she said. "Patricia, David, and Jennifer arrived 15 minutes ago. Thomas Brennan just got off the elevator." "And Marcus?" "Been here since 8, probably poisoning the well." Isabella's jaw tightened. "He has the advantage of preparation. He's been planning this for years. We've had 72 hours. Then we'll have to be smarter, not just more prepared." Ethan straightened his shoulders. "Ready?" Isabella looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw the fear she was working so hard to hide. This wasn't just about her company. This was about her identity, her life's work, everything she'd sacrificed to build something that mattered. "No," she said honestly, "but let's do it anyway." They walked into the boardroom together and every head turned. The long table could seat 20, but today only 9 board members were present, plus lawyers clustered at the periphery like well-dressed vultures. Marcus sat at the far end, perfectly composed, flanked by his allies. He smiled when he saw Ethan, the kind of smile that promised violence. "Isabella," Marcus said warmly, as if they were gathering for brunch instead of corporate warfare. And Mr. Cross, how kind of you to join us. It's my company, Marcus. I don't need an invitation. Isabella took her seat at the head of the table, and Ethan sat beside her. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone, the CEO and her husband, united front, refusing to be separated. Patricia Chen, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and silver hair, nodded at Isabella with something that looked like approval. David Okonkwo, younger and more reserved, gave a slight smile. Jennifer Walsh looked conflicted, her gaze moving between Isabella and Marcus like she was calculating which side would win. Thomas Brennan, the swing vote they needed, sat rigid and expressionless in the middle of the table. Traditional, Isabella had said, old school, the kind of man who valued procedure and precedent above all else. Let's begin, Marcus said, opening a leather folder with theatrical precision. We're here to address a matter of significant concern regarding the Reed Family Trust and the requirements set forth in Clause 17, subsection 4. Specifically, whether Isabella has satisfied the marriage requirement in good faith, or whether she has attempted to circumvent the clause's intent through fraudulent means. One of Isabella's lawyers, a woman named Caroline Ross, who looked like she ate corporate raiders for breakfast, stood immediately. Point of order, Caroline said crisply. This meeting was called as an emergency session to verify compliance with the trust requirements. The question before this board is whether Ms. Reed is legally married, not whether the board approves of her choice of spouse or judges the sincerity of her personal relationships. The board has a fiduciary responsibility to investigate potential fraud, Marcus countered smoothly. If Isabella has entered into a sham marriage solely to satisfy the trust clause, that constitutes an attempt to deceive the board and manipulate corporate governance. We have every right, indeed an obligation, to examine the circumstances. Under what authority? Caroline shot back. The trust clause specifies marriage. It does not specify the board's approval of that marriage. It does not require demonstration of romantic love. It does not grant the board oversight of Ms. Reed's personal life beyond verification of legal status. Thomas Brennan leaned forward, his first movement since the meeting began. Ms. Ross raises a valid point. The clause is quite specific in its language. Marcus, do you have legal precedent for the board's authority to investigate beyond verification of the marriage license? Marcus's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. The clause's intent is clear. Intent and language are not the same thing, Brennan said. I'm asking about legal precedent. Score 1 for their side. Ethan felt Isabella's hand brush against his under the table, a brief contact that steadied them both. Marcus shifted tactics smoothly, like a boxer adjusting his stance. Very well, let's focus on verification. The marriage license shows that Isabella Reed and Ethan Cross were married on Saturday morning. What it doesn't show is any evidence of a relationship existing prior to Friday night. No public acknowledgement, no social media presence, no witnesses to any dating relationship whatsoever. He pulled out the first exhibit, the timeline they'd seen yesterday, documenting every interaction between Ethan and Isabella at work. In 3 years of employment, Mr. Cross and Miss Reed interacted precisely 16 times in any documented capacity. Elevator rides, brief meetings, standard employee-supervisor exchanges. Nothing that suggests even a friendship, let alone a romantic relationship that would lead to marriage. Patricia Chen spoke up, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd been navigating corporate politics since before most of the room was born. Marcus, I've worked with Isabella for 7 years. In that time, I've never known her to discuss her personal life at work. The absence of public evidence doesn't prove the absence of a private relationship. Quite convenient, Marcus said dryly. A relationship so private that no one knew about it, conducted so discreetly that it left no trace, culminating in a marriage that coincidentally occurred 48 hours before a trust deadline. He turned to Ethan directly. Mr. Cross, when did you and Isabella begin dating? Ethan had prepared for this moment. They'd rehearsed it. But sitting here with 9 pairs of eyes on him and everything depending on his answer, his mouth went dry. Isabella's hand found his again under the table, a brief squeeze. 6 months ago, Ethan said, keeping his voice steady. Approximately. We didn't mark it on a calendar. How romantic. And where was your first date? A restaurant downtown. Antonio's. Nothing fancy. Isabella said she was tired of performance dining. This was true. Isabella had mentioned it during one of their text conversations. Ethan was gambling that Marcus hadn't dug deep enough to verify whether she'd actually gone there 6 months ago. And you kept this relationship secret because? Workplace policies, Ethan said. Reed Pharmaceutical requires disclosure of romantic relationships between employees of different hierarchical levels. We both knew that disclosure would complicate things, potentially cost me my position. We wanted to be sure it was serious before risking the consequences. Marcus smiled like a shark scenting blood. How admirably cautious. Yet you decided to get married after only 6 months, with no engagement period, no announcement to family or friends. That seems rather rushed for two people who were being so careful. The trust deadline forced our hand, Isabella said quietly. We'd been discussing marriage, but we were planning to wait. When I realized the clause was coming due and Marcus was preparing to challenge my position, I asked Ethan if he'd be willing to move faster than we'd planned. How very convenient that the man you'd been secretly dating for exactly 6 months was willing to marry you with 72 hours' notice. It wasn't about convenience, Ethan said, and something in his voice made Marcus pause. It was about whether I was willing to stand beside someone I cared about when she needed help. That's not convenience. That's just being a decent human being. Jennifer Walsh was watching him with open curiosity now. Thomas Brennan's expression had shifted slightly, though Ethan couldn't read it. Marcus pulled out another exhibit. Let's discuss your financial situation, Mr. Cross. According to these records, you're currently carrying approximately $200,000 in medical debt from your late wife's cancer treatment. You've taken out a second mortgage on your home. You're one major emergency away from bankruptcy. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Ethan felt heat creep up his neck, shame and anger mixing in equal measure. What's your point, Marcus? Isabella's voice was ice. My point is that Mr. Cross had significant financial motivation to accept any arrangement you offered. How much are you paying him, Isabella? What's the price tag for a convenient husband? That's enough. Isabella stood, her composure finally cracking into fury. You want to question my marriage? Fine, question away. But don't you dare suggest that Ethan is here because I bought him. He's here because I asked for help and he said yes, even though it meant exposing his personal life to exactly this kind of invasive, degrading interrogation. I'm simply establishing motive. You're establishing cruelty, Patricia Chen cut in sharply. Marcus, we all know what you're doing. You're trying to humiliate Isabella into submission by attacking the man she married. It's beneath this board and beneath you. Well, I'm protecting this company from a CEO who's demonstrating increasingly poor judgment. Poor judgment? David Okonkwo's quiet voice somehow silenced the room. Isabella has grown this company by 40% in 7 years. She's launched 5 major drug programs that other companies wouldn't touch because they weren't profitable enough. She's navigated FDA approvals, hostile market conditions, and supply chain disasters that would have destroyed lesser leaders. But you want to remove her because she married someone you don't approve of? Marcus's expression hardened. I want to ensure this company is led by someone whose personal decisions don't compromise corporate integrity. Then let's talk about integrity, Ethan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. He pulled out his phone, opening the notes he'd made during those sleepless hours. I'm a compliance analyst, Ethan continued. It's my job to find patterns, identify irregularities, trace problems to their source. And I've been wondering something since I saw your presentation yesterday, Marcus. How did you get access to all this information? Internal communications, time-stamped records of elevator rides, details of my personal finances that aren't part of any employment file. Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. I have resources. You have people in IT who violated data privacy policies to pull confidential records, Ethan said. You have banking contacts who provided information they had no legal right to share. You talk about integrity, but you built your entire case on illegally obtained evidence. Caroline Ross was already pulling out her own files, sensing an opening. Mr. Cross raises an excellent point. Marcus, how exactly did you obtain these financial records? Did you have Mr. Cross's permission, a court order? The method of obtaining information is irrelevant if the information reveals fraud. The method is absolutely relevant, Thomas Brennan said, and his voice carried weight that silenced Marcus. The board cannot act on evidence obtained through illegal means. That's not just policy, Marcus. That's law. Ethan saw it happening, the careful case Marcus had built starting to crack. But Marcus was too experienced to fold this easily. Fine, Marcus said. Disregard the financial records if you must. The timeline alone proves this marriage is fraudulent. No relationship, no courtship, no evidence of genuine connection. You want evidence of connection? Isabella's voice was quiet but fierce. Ethan remembers my coffee order from a meeting a year ago. He knows I can't sleep well. He learned my grandmother's soup recipe because I mentioned it once in passing. He listens when I talk, actually listens, not just waits for his turn to speak. He treats my work like it matters, and my struggles like they're valid, instead of dismissing them as emotional instability. She turned to face Marcus directly. You want to know why I married Ethan instead of finding someone from our social circle, as you put it? Because everyone in our social circle sees me as an asset to acquire or an obstacle to remove. Ethan sees me as a person that's worth more than any amount of old money or social connections. The room was silent. Jennifer Walsh was openly staring at Isabella now, her expression unreadable. Patricia Chen had a slight smile. Marcus recovered quickly, his voice dripping with false sympathy. That's a very touching speech, Isabella, but emotion isn't evidence. The fact remains that this marriage occurred with suspicious timing and no verifiable history. I'm calling for a vote. This board should reject Isabella's claim that she has satisfied the trust requirement and invoke Clause 17, subsection 4, provision C, transferring voting control of her shares to the board pending a suitable marriage. I object, Caroline Ross said immediately. The question before this board is whether Ms. Reed is legally married. She has provided a valid marriage license, signed by a state official, witnessed and documented according to all legal requirements. Unless you can prove the license itself is fraudulent, the board has no grounds to reject it. The license may be legal, but the marriage is not legitimate. Legitimate is not a legal standard, Caroline cut in. Legal is a legal standard, and legally, Isabella Reed is married to Ethan Cross. Everything else is your personal opinion about their relationship, which is not the board's business. Thomas Brennan nodded slowly. I agree. Ms. Ross is correct. The clause requires marriage. Miss Reed is married. Unless someone can prove the marriage license is invalid or obtained through illegal means, we're overstepping our authority by questioning it further. Ethan watched Marcus's expression shift, watched him realize he was losing the procedural battle. But Marcus hadn't survived decades of corporate warfare by giving up easily. Then I call for a different vote, Marcus said. A vote of no confidence in Isabella Reed's leadership, based on the pattern of erratic decision-making demonstrated by this rushed marriage and the poor judgment shown in recent months. The room went very still. This was the nuclear option, the one they'd feared Marcus might pull if the marriage argument failed. A vote of no confidence didn't require proving fraud. It just required convincing the board that Isabella wasn't fit to lead. You can't be serious, Patricia Chen said, her voice shaking with anger. I'm absolutely serious. Isabella has been making increasingly isolated decisions. She's refused to consider the Hartman acquisition that would have provided significant revenue. She's investing in research programs with no clear path to profitability. And now she's made a major personal decision, marriage, without consulting the board or considering how it might affect the company. That demonstrates a pattern of instability that puts Reed Pharmaceutical at risk. David Okonkwo stood abruptly. The Hartman acquisition would have gutted our research division and eliminated 300 jobs. Isabella refused it because it was wrong for the company, not because she's unstable, and her personal life is not board business. Everything a CEO does is board business when it affects the company's reputation and stability. Then let's talk about reputation and stability, Ethan said, his voice cutting through the argument. He stood, pulling out a folder he'd been holding in reserve, the one he'd spent Saturday night assembling while Isabella thought he was sleeping. I said I'm a compliance analyst, Ethan continued, and something's been bothering me since I started looking at the company's recent operations. So I pulled some records. Public records, all perfectly legal. He opened the folder. Marcus, you've been on this board for 12 years. In that time, you've pushed for 17 major acquisitions or restructurings. Want to know how many of those benefited companies you have personal financial interests in? Marcus's face went very still. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. Ethan laid out documents. The Hartman acquisition Isabella refused? Hartman's primary investor is a fund you're a silent partner in. The restructuring you proposed last year that would have outsourced manufacturing. The proposed vendor was a company your brother-in-law owns. The supply chain changes you've been pushing? They'd shift contracts to 3 different companies you have stock in. He looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes. You've been using your board position to direct company business toward your own financial interests. That's not just poor judgment, Marcus. That's likely illegal. And you want to remove Isabella because she won't play along. The silence that followed was absolute. Caroline Ross was already on her phone, likely calling more lawyers. Patricia Chen looked grimly satisfied. Jennifer Walsh had gone pale, clearly realizing she'd been on the wrong side without knowing it. Marcus stood slowly, his composure finally cracking into cold fury. You have no proof of wrongdoing. I have 17 transactions and a clear pattern. The compliance division can investigate further, and I'm sure the SEC would be very interested in the findings. Ethan kept his voice level, professional. But you can drop this challenge to Isabella's leadership and we can all move forward. Your choice. Thomas Brennan cleared his throat. I believe we've heard enough. I move that we verify Isabella Reed's marriage satisfies the trust requirement and close this matter. All in favor? Patricia Chen's hand went up immediately. Then David Okonkwo's. Jennifer Walsh hesitated for only a moment before raising hers as well. Thomas Brennan raised his own hand. Motion carries 5-4. The marriage requirement is satisfied. This meeting is adjourned. Marcus stood frozen for a moment, then gathered his materials with sharp, angry movements. This isn't over, Isabella. Yes, it is, she said quietly. And Marcus? Clean out your office. The board will be voting on your removal at the next regular meeting. I'll make sure of it. Marcus left without another word, his allies following in uncertain silence. The room slowly emptied until only Ethan, Isabella, and Caroline Ross remained. That was either brilliant or insane, Caroline said, gathering her files. Probably both. Ethan, where did you learn to weaponize compliance data like that? 3 years of reading really boring reports and connecting dots no one else bothered to look at, Ethan said, feeling the adrenaline finally start to fade. His hands were shaking. Well, keep reading them. You just saved this company. Caroline nodded to Isabella. I'll start the formal investigation into Marcus's conflicts of interest. With what Ethan found, we should have enough to remove him and possibly refer criminal charges. She left, and suddenly Ethan and Isabella were alone in the massive boardroom, surrounded by windows that showed the whole city spread out below them. We won, Isabella said, like she couldn't quite believe it. We won, Ethan confirmed. Then Isabella started laughing, the sound breaking through her careful control. She sank into a chair, shoulders shaking, laughter turning to something that might have been tears or relief or pure exhaustion. Ethan sat beside her, not touching, just present. After a moment, Isabella's breathing steadied. How did you find all that? She asked. The conflicts of interest, the patterns. When did you have time? Saturday night, Sunday, early this morning. Couldn't sleep anyway. Figured I might as well be useful. Ethan shrugged. Once you know what to look for, the patterns jump out. Marcus was good, but he wasn't perfect. He left traces. You saved my company. We saved your company, together. Ethan checked his watch. 11:37. In 5.5 hours, the trust deadline would expire and none of this would matter anymore. Isabella would be secure. The marriage would have served its purpose. And then what? I should go, Ethan said, standing. Pick up Maya. Make sure she doesn't suspect anything weird happened today. Of course. Isabella stood as well, but she didn't move toward the door. Ethan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. The annulment. We should discuss timing. I was thinking we wait a few months, let things settle, make it look natural. Whatever you think is best, Ethan said, and tried to ignore the strange hollowness in his chest at the word annulment. Unless... Isabella stopped, then started again. You said something on Saturday about standing beside people who need you. Do you still need to stand beside me? Or was that just for the board meeting? Ethan looked at her, this woman who'd invaded his life 72 hours ago and somehow become part of it, who'd eaten pancakes with his daughter and texted him at 3 a.m. and trusted him to fight battles she couldn't win alone. "I don't know," he admitted. "This started as a transaction, a legal arrangement, but somewhere between the bagels and the board meeting, it became something else. I just don't know what." "Me neither," Isabella said softly. "But I know I don't want to go back to my empty apartment and my 80-hour weeks and pretending I don't need anyone. I know that the last 3 days, despite the stress and the fear and Marcus's attacks, they've been the most real I've felt in years." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we don't rush into an annulment. Maybe we see what this is when there's no deadline, no emergency, no board meeting forcing our hand." Isabella met his eyes. "Maybe we try being married for real and see what happens." Ethan's phone buzzed. "Maya. Dad, can Isabella come for dinner again? I want to show her my volcano plans." He showed Isabella the text. She smiled, that real smile that transformed her face. "What do you think?" Isabella asked. "Should I come for dinner?" Ethan thought about Maya's excitement, about spaghetti and pancakes, and the strange domestic normalcy they'd stumbled into. He thought about 3 a.m. texts and strategic planning, and someone who saw his daughter as a person worth knowing instead of an inconvenience. He thought about the fact that for the first time since Sarah died, he didn't feel like he was carrying everything alone. "Yeah," he said, "you should definitely come for dinner." They left the boardroom together, walked to the elevator side by side. In the reflection on the steel doors, they looked like what they were. Two people who'd fought a battle and won, exhausted and uncertain and still standing. The elevator descended, carrying them away from corporate warfare and back toward normal life, toward a daughter who wanted to show off volcano plans and a future that was suddenly, unexpectedly open. "Ethan," Isabella said as they reached the parking garage, "thank you for everything." "Stop thanking me. We're married, apparently for real now. That means we're on the same team." "I've never been on anyone's team before." "Well, you are now. Get used to it." Isabella laughed, and Ethan thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd stumbled into something worth keeping. Not because it was perfect or planned or anything like what either of them expected, but because it was real. And real, it turned out, was enough. 3 weeks after this board meeting, Ethan woke up to find Isabella asleep on his couch, still in yesterday's clothes, her laptop open on the coffee table showing spreadsheets he couldn't begin to understand. This had become normal somehow. Isabella working late at his house, Maya doing homework at the dining table while Isabella reviewed reports, the three of them eating takeout because nobody had time to cook. The lines between Isabella's life and theirs had blurred so gradually that Ethan couldn't pinpoint when his house had become their house, when dinner for two had become dinner for three. He covered Isabella with the blanket Maya kept draped over the couch arm, careful not to wake her. She looked younger in sleep, the permanent tension in her shoulders finally released. The investigation into Marcus had consumed the past weeks, countless hours of documentation and legal proceedings that had left Isabella running on caffeine and stubborn determination. "Dad?" Maya appeared in the doorway, already dressed for school, whispering, "Is Isabella still here?" "Yeah, honey. She fell asleep working again." "She works too much." Maya said it with the uncomplicated wisdom of 9-year-olds who saw straight through adult excuses. "You should make her stop." "I can't make her do anything. She's the boss, remember?" "She's also your wife." Maya said it matter-of-factly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Wives are supposed to take care of each other. That's what Mrs. Chen says." Ethan's chest tightened. They'd told Maya the truth, or a version of it, that Isabella needed help, that they'd gotten married quickly to solve a problem, that it was complicated. But Maya, being Maya, had simply accepted Isabella as part of their lives and moved on. Kids were resilient like that, or maybe just better at recognizing what mattered. "I'll talk to her," Ethan promised. "Now go eat breakfast. You have that math test today." Maya made a face but headed for the kitchen. Ethan started coffee, the familiar morning routine grounding him. The past 3 weeks had been surreal. Board meetings he suddenly had access to, lawyers calling his phone, colleagues treating him differently now that everyone knew he'd married the CEO. He'd expected resentment or accusations of favoritism, but mostly people seemed confused and slightly impressed that quiet Ethan Cross from compliance had somehow pulled off the most dramatic office romance in company history. If only they knew it hadn't been romance at all. Or at least, it hadn't started that way. The coffee maker beeped. Ethan poured 2 cups, adding cream to one the way Isabella liked it, and brought it to the couch. She stirred when he set the cup down, blinking awake with the momentary disorientation of someone who'd forgotten where they fell asleep. "Morning," Ethan said quietly. "What time is it?" Isabella sat up, reaching for the coffee automatically. 6:30. You've been here all night." "I didn't mean to. The Carlson contracts needed review, and I just wanted to finish." She stopped, rubbing her eyes. "I'm sorry. I should go home. Let you and Maya have your morning." "Isabella." Ethan waited until she looked at him. "You are home. You've been staying here more than your own apartment for 2 weeks. Your toothbrush is in the bathroom. Your work clothes are in my closet. Maya sets a place for you at dinner without being asked." Something flickered across Isabella's face. Fear, maybe, or hope. "Is that a problem?" "No, but we should probably talk about it. About what we're actually doing here." Before Isabella could respond, Maya burst back into the living room, backpack already on, holding a permission slip. "Dad, you forgot to sign this. It's for the science fair field trip next week." Ethan took the paper, scanning it quickly. The trip was to Reed Pharmaceuticals' research facility, part of the educational outreach program Isabella had mentioned. "This is to your company," he said, looking at Isabella. "I know, I approved it." Isabella smiled at Maya. "We have an excellent lab for demonstrating chemical reactions, and I made sure they'd cover volcano demonstrations specifically." Maya's eyes went wide. "Really? Can I show them my design?" "Absolutely. In fact, I'll make sure one of our senior chemists is available to give you feedback." "This is the coolest thing ever!" Maya threw her arms around Isabella in an impulsive hug that seemed to surprise both of them. Then she was grabbing her lunch and racing for the door, calling back, "Love you, Dad. Bye, Isabella." The door slammed. Silence settled over the house. "She hugged you," Ethan said. She did. Isabella was staring at the doorway like she couldn't quite process what had happened. I don't think anyone's hugged me spontaneously in years." "Maya hugs everyone she likes. It's kind of her thing." Ethan signed the permission slip, setting it aside. "Isabella, we need to talk, really talk, about what happens next." Isabella set down her coffee, her expression shifting to something guarded. "You want to discuss the annulment timeline?" "No, I want to discuss why we're still pretending this is temporary when we both know it stopped being temporary weeks ago." The words hung between them, too honest to take back. Isabella stood abruptly, moving to the window, her back to him. "I don't know how to do this," she said quietly. "The board meeting, the corporate warfare, that I understand. But this? Normal life, being part of a family, I don't have a roadmap for it." "Nobody does. You just figure it out as you go." "What if I'm bad at it? What if I mess it up and hurt Maya, or you, or then we fix it, together? That's what families do." Ethan moved closer but didn't touch her. "Isabella, you've been eating dinner with us every night. You helped Maya with her book report last week. You fell asleep on our couch because you were too tired to drive home. Those aren't the actions of someone planning to leave." "I don't want to leave," Isabella admitted, so softly he almost didn't hear it. "But I don't want to trap you either. This marriage, it was supposed to save my company. It wasn't supposed to become real. You didn't sign up for actual marriage, for a relationship, for what? For someone who makes Maya laugh? For someone who actually cares about the work I do? For someone who texts me at 3 a.m. because she can't sleep and knows I probably can't either?" Ethan turned her gently to face him. "I didn't sign up for any of this, but I'm not sorry it happened." Isabella's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Your daughter hugged me." "She did. And I liked it. I liked being part of her morning routine and helping with her homework and hearing about her day. I liked all of it." Isabella's voice cracked slightly. "I've spent my entire life building a company and forgot to build a life. And then you offered me both, and I don't know what to do with that." "You accept it," Ethan said simply. "You stop waiting for permission to be happy, and you just let yourself have this." It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Everything else, the board, the company, the complications, we can handle those. But this, us, what we're building here, that only works if we both choose it, not because of deadlines or legal requirements, because we want it. Isabella looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw the war happening behind her eyes. The part of her that had learned to never trust, never rely, never let anyone close enough to hurt her, that part was fighting hard against the possibility of something different. I want it, she said finally. I want this. You and Maya and grocery shopping and falling asleep on your couch. I want normal and complicated and real. I'm just terrified I'll destroy it. Then we'll rebuild it. That's what people do. They mess up and they fix things and they keep trying. Ethan took her hand. But Isabella, I need you to decide. Are we doing this for real? Actual marriage, actual relationship, all the complicated, messy reality that comes with it? Because I can't keep living in this liminal space where we're married but not really, together but not committed, building something we're both too scared to name. What do you want? Isabella asked. I want you to stay. Not just for tonight, or this week, or until things settle with Marcus. I want you to stay because this is where you belong. With us. With me. He paused, his heart hammering. I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. We got married for all the wrong reasons, and we barely knew each other, and nothing about this makes sense on paper. But I don't care about paper anymore. I care about the fact that you remember Maya's favorite color, and you learned to make terrible pancakes because she asked you to, and you look at me like I matter. So yes, I want this for real. The question is whether you do. Isabella was crying now, silent tears tracking down her face. I've never had anyone fight for me like this. Everyone I've ever known wanted something from me. My money, my position, my connections. You just want me. I want you, so, Ethan confirmed. Complicated, workaholic, brilliant you. The version that falls asleep on my couch and texts me soup recipes at midnight and treats my daughter like she's worth knowing. That's who I want. I'm a disaster at relationships. I work 80-hour weeks. I have enemies on the board who'll use this against me. I'll probably forget anniversaries and work through dinners and I'll remind you about anniversaries and save you a plate when you work late and we'll figure it out together because that's what partners do. Ethan cupped her face gently. But I need to know you're all in. Not halfway, not tentatively. All in. Isabella closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, something had shifted. The fear was still there, but determination had joined it. Okay, she said. Okay, I'm all in. For real this time. Ethan kissed her, soft and careful, and Isabella kissed him back like she was trying to communicate everything she couldn't say with words. When they finally broke apart, she was smiling through tears. I have no idea what I'm doing, she admitted. Me neither. We'll figure it out. Together? Together. Isabella's phone rang, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and sighed. It's Caroline. The Marcus investigation, probably. I should take this. Take it. I'll make breakfast. Ethan headed to the kitchen, listening to Isabella's side of the conversation as he pulled out eggs and bread. The investigation had uncovered even more than he'd found. Years of financial manipulation, conflicts of interest, outright fraud. Marcus was facing criminal charges now, and 3 other board members had resigned rather than face similar scrutiny. Reed Pharmaceutical was in upheaval, but it was the good kind of chaos, the kind that came from cutting out infection and letting healthy tissue finally heal. That was Caroline, Isabella said, ending the call and joining him in the kitchen. Marcus is accepting a plea deal. He'll resign from all positions, pay restitution, avoid jail time if he cooperates fully with the investigation. How do you feel about that? Isabella was quiet for a moment, thinking. Relieved. Angry that he nearly destroyed everything. Grateful it's almost over. She paused. Grateful you saw what I couldn't see because I was too close to it. That's what partners are for. Fresh eyes, different perspectives. Is this what it's like? Being married for real? I don't know. Sarah and I did everything traditionally. Dated for years, planned a wedding, built our life step by step. This is completely different. Ethan cracked eggs into a pan. But different doesn't mean wrong. No, Isabella agreed softly. Different doesn't mean wrong. They ate breakfast together, talking about the day ahead. Isabella had meetings, Ethan had reports to review, and somewhere in the mundane planning of schedules and logistics, the last of the tension from their earlier conversation dissolved. This was real. They were really doing this. I should go home, Isabella said, checking the time. Change clothes, get ready for... She stopped. Except, I don't want to go home. I want to shower here and put on the work clothes I already have in your closet and drive to the office with you like we do this every day. So do that. Ethan, people will notice. The whole company will know we're actually living together. They already assume we are. We're married. That's generally what married people do. He rinsed their plates. Unless you're worried about appearances, I'm worried about Maya. If this doesn't work out, if we try this and it falls apart, she'll be hurt. And I won't do that to her. Ethan turned to face her fully. Then we make sure it works out. We communicate. We're honest. We don't let problems fester. We fight for this the same way we fought for your company, with everything we have. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, it's hard. Relationships are work, every single day. But the work is worth it when you're building something that matters. He took her hands. This matters, Isabella. You matter. To me, to Maya, to this weird little family we've accidentally built. Isabella squeezed his hands. Okay, I'm staying. No more back and forth, no more keeping an escape route open. I'm staying. Good. Now go shower. You smell like boardroom coffee and desperation. She laughed and swatted his arm, and the normalcy of it, the easy affection, the casual teasing, felt like the most radical thing Ethan had experienced in years. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Isabella officially moved into Ethan's house, though she kept her apartment as an office space for confidential work. Maya accepted this with the adaptability of childhood, asking only if she could help decorate Isabella's new room and whether Isabella would come to her science fair presentation. The answer to both was yes. Ethan watched Isabella learn to be part of a family, stumbling through it with the same fierce determination she brought to everything else. She forgot to check Maya's homework twice and felt terrible about it. She worked late and missed dinner 3 times in the first week, prompting a family meeting where Maya very seriously explained that dinner was important and Isabella needed to try harder to be home. Isabella, CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, sat at their kitchen table and apologized to a 9-year-old for not prioritizing family time. Then she blocked out 7 to 9 p.m. on her calendar every weeknight as non-negotiable family hours. She was trying. That's what mattered. The science fair arrived on a crisp October morning. Ethan and Isabella stood in Maya's classroom, surrounded by papier-mâché planets and baking soda volcanoes, watching their daughter explain chemical reactions to a panel of judges with the confidence of someone who'd been coached by actual pharmaceutical researchers. She's incredible, Isabella whispered. She is, Ethan agreed, and she adores you. You know that, right? I'm starting to believe it. Isabella's hand found his, their fingers lacing together automatically. Ethan, I've been thinking about the annulment we never filed for. His stomach dropped. Okay. I don't want to file it, ever. I want this to be real in every way, legally, emotionally, all of it. But I also want to do things right. So I was wondering... She turned to face him, nervous in a way he'd never seen her. Would you marry me again, properly this time? With Maya there and vows we actually mean, and a celebration of what we've built instead of a desperate scramble to meet a deadline? Ethan stared at her, his brain struggling to process what she was asking. You want to renew our vows? I want to marry you the right way, the real way. Because I love you, and I love Maya, and I love the life we're building together. And I want to stand in front of people and say that out loud instead of signing papers in a government office, because we had no choice. Isabella's eyes were bright. So what do you say? Will you marry me, Ethan Cross? The classroom had gone quiet. Ethan realized belatedly that several parents and at least 2 judges were listening with unabashed interest. Maya was staring at them from across the room, her eyes huge. Yes, Ethan said, and his voice cracked slightly. Yes, I'll marry you. Again, properly this time. Isabella kissed him, right there in the science fair, and the room erupted in applause. Maya squealed and ran over, throwing her arms around both of them. "Does this mean we get a party?" Maya asked. "The biggest party," Isabella promised, "with cake and everything. Can I help plan it?" "You're the maid of honor. Of course you can help plan it." Maya's face lit up like she'd just discovered a new galaxy, and Ethan thought his heart might actually burst from the sheer overwhelming reality of this moment. His daughter, his wife, his family, all of it real and chosen and fought for. The ceremony happened 6 weeks later on a Saturday afternoon by the lake where this whole thing had started. They kept it small, just family and close friends. Patricia Chen came, beaming with approval. David Okonkwo brought his wife. Caroline Ross showed up with her partner and a very expensive bottle of champagne. Maya walked down the aisle first, scattering flower petals with great seriousness. Then Isabella, in a simple white dress that was nothing like the red power suit from that first party, looking more nervous than Ethan had ever seen her. They'd written their own vows this time. Real ones, true ones. Isabella went first, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "Ethan, when I asked you to marry me the first time, I was asking you to save my company. Today, I'm asking you to share my life. You've taught me that strength doesn't mean standing alone, that asking for help isn't weakness, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be loved. You see me, not the CEO, not the board member, just me. And you've never asked me to be anything other than exactly who I am. I love you for that. I love you for the way you love Maya. I love you for falling asleep during movies and making terrible pancakes and remembering soup recipes at midnight. I promise to show up for you and Maya every single day. I promise to choose us, even when it's hard. I promise to build a life with you, not just a legal arrangement. This time, I'm not marrying you because I have to. I'm marrying you because I want to, because I choose you, today and always." Ethan had to clear his throat before he could speak. "Isabella, 3 months ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life would be. Small, careful, focused solely on giving Maya the stability she deserved. Then you crashed into my world and asked me to do something crazy, and I said yes because you needed help. But somewhere between the board meetings and the breakfast pancakes, I realized I wasn't just helping you. You were helping me. You reminded me that I'm allowed to want things for myself, not just for Maya. That I'm allowed to build something new without betraying what I lost. You've become part of our family so seamlessly that I can't remember what mornings were like before you were in them. Maya loves you. I love you. And I promise to stand beside you not just when you need saving, but every ordinary Tuesday when nothing dramatic is happening and we're just living our lives together. I promise to remember your coffee order forever. I promise to make you soup when you're stressed. I promise to tell you when you're working too much and to celebrate when you're changing the world. This time, I'm not marrying you to fulfill a requirement. I'm marrying you because you're the best decision I ever made. Because you're home." There wasn't a dry eye in the venue, including the officiant, who had to pause twice to compose himself before pronouncing them married. When Ethan kissed Isabella this time, it wasn't careful or tentative. It was real and certain, and full of the future they'd chosen together. The reception was exactly what it should be, chaotic and joyful, and full of people who actually cared about them. Maya gave a toast that mostly consisted of jokes about Isabella's terrible cooking skills, which made everyone laugh and Isabella blush. Patricia Chen gave a toast about watching Isabella transform from an isolated CEO into someone who'd learned to let people in. David Okonkwo toasted Ethan's bravery in taking on both Marcus and Isabella's stubbornness. And later, when the sun was setting over the lake and the party was winding down, Ethan found Isabella standing by the water, watching the light scatter across the waves. "Hey," he said, slipping his arm around her waist. "You okay?" "More than okay. I'm happy." She said it with wonder, like happiness was a foreign concept she was just now discovering. "Is this what it's like, being part of something bigger than yourself?" "Yeah, this is exactly what it's like." "I like it." Isabella leaned into him. "Thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes. That first time when I made an insane request at midnight. For standing beside me when you had every reason to walk away. For teaching me what family actually means. You taught me things too, that it's okay to ask for help. that building something new doesn't erase what came before, that sometimes the craziest choices lead to the best outcomes. They stood there together, watching the sun set, while behind them Maya's laughter rang out as she chased other kids across the lawn. This was their life now, messy and complicated, and nothing like either of them had planned. It was perfect. 6 months later, Ethan sat in the executive boardroom, the same room where they'd fought Marcus, where everything had almost fallen apart. But the board looked different now. 3 new members, all chosen by Isabella for their integrity and vision. Patricia Chen had been promoted to COO. The atmosphere was collaborative instead of hostile. And Ethan was there not as the CEO's husband, but as the newly appointed Director of Compliance and Ethics, a position Isabella had created specifically to ensure what happened with Marcus never happened again. The quarterly audit is clean, Ethan reported, pulling up his presentation. No irregularities, no conflicts of interest, no red flags. The new oversight protocols are working. Patricia nodded approvingly. Excellent work. This is exactly the kind of institutional integrity we need. The meeting continued, professional and productive. Afterward, Isabella caught Ethan in the hallway. Dinner tonight? She asked. I promised Maya we'd try that new Thai place. Can't. I have a PTA meeting at 6, but I'll be home by 7:30. I'll pick up food on the way home, Thai or Chinese. Maya's been asking for dumplings all week. Dumplings it is. Isabella kissed him quickly, mindful that they were still at work. Love you. Love you too. Don't work late. I won't. Family hours are sacred, remember? Ethan watched her walk back to her office, briefcase in one hand, phone in the other, already fielding the next crisis. But tonight she'd be home by 7. She'd eat dumplings with them and help Maya with homework, and they'd watch whatever show Maya had picked out. Normal life. Extraordinary in its ordinariness. That evening, the 3 of them sat around the dinner table, Maya chattering about her day, while Isabella and Ethan exchanged amused glances over her head. The house smelled like Chinese food and felt like home. Dad? Maya said suddenly. Can I ask you something? Always. You know how you told me you and Isabella got married really fast because she needed help? Ethan's chest tightened. They'd been honest with Maya from the start, but maybe now that she was older, she had questions they weren't prepared to answer. Yeah, I remember. Well, I was thinking, you helped her, and then she helped us, and now we're all helping each other, so it worked out perfectly, right? Ethan looked at Isabella, saw his own emotion reflected in her eyes. Yeah, honey, he said softly, it worked out perfectly. Good. Maya went back to her dumplings, the philosophical moment already forgotten in favor of deciding which sauce was best. Later that night, after Maya was asleep and the house was quiet, Ethan found Isabella in their bedroom, going through paperwork from the day. You're supposed to be done working, he reminded her. I am done. I'm just reviewing tomorrow's agenda. She set the papers aside. Ethan, do you ever regret it? Saying yes that night? Everything that came after? He thought about the question seriously, because Isabella deserved serious answers. No. Not even the hard parts. Not even the fear and the stress and the board meetings, because all of it led here. To this. To married life with a workaholic CEO and a 9-year-old who wants to build increasingly dangerous science projects? To family, to home, to you. Ethan pulled her close. This isn't what I planned, but it's better than anything I could have planned. You're better than anything I could have imagined. Isabella kissed him, slow and deep and full of promise. I love you. I know I don't say it enough. You show it every day. That's enough. They stayed like that for a long moment. 2 people who'd started as strangers and become partners, who'd faked a marriage and built a real one, who'd saved each other in ways neither had expected. Ethan? Isabella murmured against his shoulder. Thank you for making a terrible joke at my birthday party. He laughed, the sound full of joy and disbelief at how far they'd come. Thank you for saying yes. In the room down the hall, Maya slept peacefully, surrounded by books and science equipment and the security of knowing she was loved. In the house that had once belonged to just 2 people, 3 lives now intertwined, messy and complicated and beautifully, impossibly real. The joke Ethan shouldn't have made had become the best decision he'd ever made. The desperate arrangement had become a love story. The strangers had become family. And standing in their bedroom holding the woman who'd crashed into his life and changed everything, Ethan Cross, single dad, compliance analyst, man who'd sworn never to take risks, realized that sometimes the greatest adventures began with the smallest moments of bravery. All you had to do was say yes, and mean it.